All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Monday, October 24th of 2022, wrapping up the week 7 of NFL tonight with a Monday night football showdown. Got some basketball going on. Think we got some hockey going on. So, you know, like we've said before, best time of the year for DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, talks DFS strategy, any tips and advice that you guys want to talk about. Get your questions in our Discord under the Office Hours channel. If you're not a member of our Discord, there's a link in the description below. And if you have any questions that you're thinking about now, go ahead and throw them in the YouTube chat. Once we get through all of the Discord questions, we will get to all of the questions in the YouTube chat. Got a lot of questions today that came in over the weekend. I know my man Jordan Chan was back on Friday doing office hours for you guys. Happy that he was able to step in my absence on Friday, but we're back at it again today, ready to kick things off. One thing that we got to do before we get going is talk about the weekly max challenge. For those of you who do not know what our weekly max challenge is, it is a giveaway that we started last NFL season. Doing it this NFL season, what you got to do is you got to max out the mini max on DraftKings. I'm going to pull it up here so you should be able to see all of the rules. So max out the mini max on DraftKings. Wear the SaberSim avatar, fill out our form, and you will be entered to win all of our awesome prizes week to week. What I can say is that we had not one, but 2 people win the mini max this week, and it was not a duped lineup. So for those of you who do not know, the mini max tends to fill pretty fast. If you guys, miss out on the action, they usually open up another mini max. So you can, still enter one of those and get in on the action. We want everyone to participate and don't want to let anyone feel left out. So not only let me check, I believe it was J115 win the big flagship mini max. Stimpy 43 also won the mini max as well. Congratulations to both of you. You guys are going to win a bonus for winning the mini max, 1 free year of SaberSim Advanced, a custom championship belt, and a dedicated max challenge spot in the winner's circle. Congratulations to both of you. Glad to see SaberSim users continuing to kill it. That makes 3 mini max winners so far this season. Going to get an awesome championship belt just like this one. I can confirm that 12-pack abs, his is already being worked on and sent out. Hopefully when he receives it, he'll post some pictures so everyone can see what they are looking forward to if they do indeed win the mini max. So, that wraps up our winners for the week. We're going to do the giveaway right now, which is the free entries to next week's mini max. And we're going to be doing a special second giveaway. So there was a person who won a winner circle 10K tier, and this person has decided that he wants to pay it forward and give his 3 free months of SaberSim to another user. So we will be spinning the wheel on the second time for 3 free months of SaberSim Advanced, courtesy of a mystery winner circle person. So thank you to the person for being so generous. And we are going to go over to our wheel of names. And we had 140 people max enter the mini max this week. We're going to hit shuffle a couple times, get the names jumbled up a little bit. If you want to, confirm that you are indeed on this list, we post a link to the names for everyone who max entered this week in the Discord, in the Office Hours channel. I linked it when we went live. So go ahead and check that out. I am very sure we're very thorough to make sure we get everyone in this list. So with that being said, this is for the tickets to next week's mini max. And the winner is Spence Building Epic Problem. Congratulations, Epic Problem. You are the winner for this week for the giveaway for the tickets to next week's mini max. We will reach out to you after the stream and let you know you have won Epic Problem. So we're going to do the second giveaway here for the 3 free months. Hit the shuffle a couple times and spin it again. Let's see who our winner is. And the winner is, it's close, Nopticopter. Congratulations. 3 free months of SaberSim Advanced coming your way. We will also reach out to you. That wraps up our week 7 of our weekly max challenge. It is not too late to get in on the action. Still plenty of prizes to be won. So I encourage everybody to continue to participate. Start participating if you're not. We're giving away prizes all season, and I will look forward to week 8. So that being said, everybody, we're going to jump back over to SaberSim and get going on the questions today. Had a lot of questions come in over the weekend. Should be a full stream here. So with that being said, we are going to pull up SaberSim right here, and we are going to get going on these questions. Had a couple questions come in from support over the weekend as well. So we're going to start with these support questions. That way I don't forget them. And we're going to get SaberSim pulled up. And the first question that came in from support is a pretty good one here. So we're going to start with this one. And I'm going to put it in the chat. Question says, when I hear pro players say they just know what they are looking for in each and every lineup they choose, is there like certain criteria to be on the lookout for? Is there some generic thing we should know? So not sure who this question came in from, but whoever it is, we'll get you a recording after the stream and get that sent back over to you. I think it's a fair question for sure. It's a very, I'll say, like, process-based question, just because I think that some players value certain things over another player who might value other things more. So like, for instance, our partners Run Pure Sports had a stream earlier today where Big T and Brick 75 were both on the stream, and they're known as two very different players. Brick is more like stats based and model based, and Big T is more of like a field player. So like, that's an example where like two people, both pro players, very good, on opposite sides of the spectrum. One thing might matter so much more to one person, while a different thing might matter so much more to another person. So I think what it really comes down to is that, you have to understand your own process. You have to have a process that's repeatable, that you can do night after night, and hopefully, ideally one that is profitable. That way, like, okay, I've won, over this period of time doing this thing. I'm not saying don't make adjustments or tweaks to your process, but like the core principles of your process are consistent. And then you can understand, what are the things you value that you think give you an edge? Is it ownership? Is it lineup construction? Is it like the type of stacks you're using? Is it like some correlation component? And these are things that like SaberSim tries to value for you. So if you go like to our slider settings, we're on like an NFL Showdown slate, but let's hover over to basketball for tonight. I think like a classic slate will give us like a little better understanding. So like we value correlation at a certain level, we value ownership fade at a certain level, and we also value sim diversity at a certain level. And these are back tested levels and settings that we've spent time and resources to try and dial in to the best of our ability. And what I can say is like, adjusting these aren't going to be like a huge value add for you. But, if you're like in step 3 and you're spot checking your lineups. So, let's just like run a couple lineups so we can look at some lineups, which was like the root of the question. I think that, as like a MME player, like a mass multi-entry, you're building, 150 sets, 300 uniques, whatever, it's going to be like really impossible to like look lineup by lineup and kind of find those things. I think, our new min unique players feature is like a huge value add and saves a lot of time. It's like really tedious to say like, okay, this one lineup has like Laurie Markkanen and Kelly Olynyk with Bam, but then this lineup like doesn't. They like swapped Bam for this other player. And are my lineups like clustering? Are my lineups are the combinations too repeatable? I think, this min unique players here solves that problem really well about getting diversity between your lineups. I think like the best thing you can do is to try and find lineups that are similar EV, that are neutrally correlated to one another in your portfolio, to give you more chances to win throughout a night rather than like winning all the money or winning none of the money. I think that, just like looking at a lineup like from my own perspective, and I'm nowhere near like pro level high stakes level. I consider myself like lower to mid stakes tier player, but I'm not like, okay, I'm usually building like 150 lineups. My seventh lineup and my 95th lineup are like too close. Like, no, I don't know. I don't have the time to sit here. Neither can my brain balance all of these things together. Maybe some people can, and good for them. But I would say, just have a process where you kind of know the things that are important to you, and you can always like spot check your constructions, spot check your stacks, look at, like the ownership of your players. I'm not saying like some ownership is like a great metric, but it's like something you can look at. So, you can look at like your exposures. Are you just like all in on some players, or really like maybe too far spread out? So just some things to think about. I think when you hear personalities in the space talk about, oh yeah, my lineups look great, it's not as fine tooth lineup by lineup as you might think. I don't think there's like any specific thing that every single player is looking at. Different players value different things. So I think that's the best way to look about it, but happy to talk about it further if anyone has any follow-up there. And then moving on to our second question that came in through support. Going to get this one into the chat. This one says, how to pick NBA lineups and advice for after hours / short slates. Okay, so I'll start with the after hours / short slates ones because I think those are a little more interesting. Those are usually like the turbos or the night slates. A lot of the times these slates will, I believe it's the turbos don't have late swap. These are like slates where, it's only games that start at that particular time. I think in, situations like this, it's really important to like be at your building area really close up until lock, because you're not going to have the opportunity to take advantage of late swap. So instead, you're going to have to like capitalize on any like breaking news really close to the slate starting. I think that in a sport, in a contest type like turbos, you could come at it from like a couple different approaches. Like the late swap edge is gone. So where do you get your edge? I think that's the question like you need to kind of solve. Are you really aggressive with your ownership and the ownership stance you take? Is that how you want to be aggressive? Or like, do you want to play a lot of lineups and get really spread out and hope one of those lineups kind of gets there? So it depends like what kind of player you are. I think those are like two sides of the spectrum to kind of approach turbos from. Me, myself, I'm typically a little more of an aggressive player. So I might approach a turbo by saying, okay, there's no late swap. I want to get really aggressive on a couple of spots that I think are undervalued and that I think I could get a lot of edge from. And that will make my nights a lot more boom or bust if I'm playing turbos. So it's not something I do regularly, but if I were to play a turbo, that's how I would do it. Or you could play the, long-term approach of, I'm going to go into turbos. I'm going to set my min uniques as high as I feel comfortable with how far down I go in my pool, try and spread out, try and get a lot of shots on goal, and hopefully I can take down a contest and do it in a little more risk averse way. I think, there's nothing wrong with either of those approaches, but just some thoughts on like those turbo smaller slates and how I would approach it. Some other ways you can approach that as well. And then, for the first part of the question, how to pick NBA lineups. I think like a lot of the lineups, especially toward the top of your pool, I'd say are a lot closer in EV than you might think. And what I would say is that, really like try and get as many min uniques as you can. I think something Jordan likes to, as like a guardrail, is like try and stay within like the top 25% of your pool of lineups. And just it's more of, just be careful that you're not overvaluing min uniques and getting really low lineups in your pool where either like they're not using that much salary, they're really low projected, or just like not the best lineup overall. So I would say, use min uniques to the point where, you're not using all of the lineups in the bottom of your pool, and, use that like 25% ish mark as like a guardrail, as like a point where you need to start kind of looking at what the lineups in the bottom of your lineup pool look like, and see where you feel comfortable like spot checking some of the bottom lineups and saying, are you okay playing this? So that's my advice for picking NBA lineups out of your lineup pool. And one last question here from support, and then we're going to hop over to Discord and get going with the Discord questions. So this one says, my one question, since your lineup builder is simulating a game to develop lineups, if we decide to completely fade a player at a certain position, i.e. injury concern, do we need to increase projections for other players on the team at that position, or will the simulator account for that? Okay, really good question here. So it really sounds like the root of the question is like, hey, let's find a questionable player. So we're gonna go down here. Okay, Sengun is questionable for Houston. So let's go over to Houston. So what it sounds like the player's asking is like, hey, let's say Sengun is questionable, and I don't want to like, I want to build for a situation where he is indeed out. If I uncheck him from my player pool, will the builder treat it as if he's out and run sims with him out? So the answer to the question is no. So as of right now, if we were to run lineups, every time we ran it for Houston, he would be in the lineup and he would have a, projected point output in the sim. We just would never put him into your lineups. So like you would have to either X him out, and then, if you think that Garuba is going to directly replace him 1-for-1 and get all of those minutes, then you could bump Garuba up to accumulate some of his points. But until he is actually marked out and like known to be out is the moment where we will mark his status to out, rerun sims with the new group of available players, and redistribute points and minutes and ownership from that point. So just by marking him out in the app, you aren't changing the sim inputs per se, because you're choosing to mark him out, but other players, other SaberSim users, aren't doing that same thing. And there's only like one bucket of sims for everybody. So that's how that works. That's why like being around an NBA season to take advantage of situations where a player is indeed marked out and somebody else on the team becomes a huge value add is really important. But just as a clarification, a player is not out in the sims until they are marked out like officially by the team, and will remain in the sims even if they have a questionable tag, even if you uncheck them from your own player pool. So that's the answer to that question. If anyone else listening has any follow-up, let me know. But we're going to check him back in here. And then we are going to hop over to Discord. So I know Jordan was on Friday. I saw a question come in a little later on Friday, so I'm gonna get this one in the chat here. If it's a duplicate, I apologize, but I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody's questions here. So this one came in from ADM Perry, and it says, if this is giving away too much secret sauce, no need to answer. But to the extent you can, could you describe what's going on with the late swap simulations after a player is officially ruled out, i.e. NBA, but who SaberSim already has an out anyway? This is something I see all the time across the sports, but maybe a good example was the Sims of Memphis right after Dylan Brooks officially announced out. Even though he was never in the lineup / Sims to begin with, that thanks as always, or likewise when the starting lineup comes out, and it's exactly what was expected. Okay, so, really similar like topic to kind of build on from the previous question. So happy this was the next one in the queue. And, just going back, to the question, it says, could you describe what's going on with the late swap simulations after a player is officially ruled out? So, like we just talked about, as soon as, we'll use Sengun for the sake of the conversation, is ruled out, he is, taken out of the available player pool, and SaberSim understands the other players on the team and the depth chart, and will plug and play basically players based on him no longer being available. And we will run the sims based on the players we have available, get new sim outputs for, projection and ownership. All the stats will change, minutes, percentiles, all of that good stuff. You'll be able to see the outputs here. And, this player is probably now a really good play because somebody else was ruled out. I mean, there's no, secret sauce other than, we're taking the out player out and we're rerunning the sims with the available players. We, understand people's minutes and histories and all of that good stuff. So no secret sauce there. That's really how it works. As far as like, when the sims run. So, the news comes out, we're really quick at getting that new information into our database and processing it and running sims. Our sims, especially for NBA, are really fast. I would say, if you're in the Discord, keep an eye on the NBA lineup alerts. A channel is set up to pull in tweets from the Underdog NBA account, which is really, really fast. And then you can see when new sims start. You can see when new sims finish in Discord. And then also this last updated up here. I would say if you see a sim finish in Discord, hit the update projections here. This timestamp will update just as it just did. So, before it said 202 and it said, our last sim completed at 220. The Discord will give you information about for what teams it ran for. And then this will tell you, how up to date your projections are. And then also remember, when an NBA lineup is released, you will get check marks for the teams that lineups are indeed confirmed for. So that's my best advice there. Let me know if you have any follow-up. And we are going to hit this next question from Aaron. Came in over the weekend. Looks like there was some back and forth on it already. People jumping in and engaging in conversation, but I'm just going to hit it anyways. Question says, hey guys, when I sort my entry pool, does SaberSim fill them in order I sorted, or does it fill in the order they were imported? In other words, when I upload them, my 150 max is on top and single entry contests underneath. Does SaberSim fill the lineups using unique rank, let's say, from 150 max down, or ultimately does SaberSim fill the contest entries how I have them sorted, single entries, then 150 max if I sorted that way? Okay, so, the answer is pretty basic, but I'm just going to demo it live in case, anyone's having any trouble following along. So let me just get an entries file loaded up here really quickly. And we're going to go over to the entry editor. And what Aaron is asking is like, hey, I imported my CSV into the entry editor. The way it came in was, kind of mumbo jumbo. If I want to fill unique rank. How will that work? So the answer is, you can go into a build. So we're just going to run a couple lineups right here, and we're going to go through the filling process for your lineups. So let's get this build up and running, make a couple quick adjustments here just so we can see the lineups. So we're going to go to this fill entries green tab over here. And from this screen, let's say we want to do unique rank. You can do a lot of things. You could sort by buy-in by just clicking on the buy-in header, and it'll sort descending. It'll sort ascending if you click it again. You can do the same thing for your entries if you want to do all your single entries first. Or you could do, you could sort opposite and do all your 150s first. You could sort by type if you're playing satellites and GPPs, whatever it may be. Or, if you come over here, you can actually like grab and drag your contests around and be as manipulative as you want to be. So if you want to fill, by price pool, which we don't have in here, but the price pool of your contest, you can sort them any way you see fit. And then if you were to fill by unique rank, let's just do by entries for the sake of this. So, if I have 20 lineups and I'm filling by unique rank, this top single entry will get the number 1 lineup, and then the next single entry will get the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, the number 5. Then we get to a 3 max. This will take the next 3, and then it'll just keep following 1 through 20, and then filling like over and over again in that same manner. So that's the way it'll work. You have a lot of options about different ways to fill your lineups. And then, you can also drag the contest if you want to be very, very specific in the way you do that. So a couple options for you there, Aaron. Let me know if you have any follow-up. I wasn't able to read the 13 message thread on stream, and I didn't. So let me know if there's any follow-up there. All right, Mr. T said, is there a way to see all of the information relating to your builds on a cell phone? I'm finding that with the updates, the way the info is presented at the bottom of each team, you can't read all of the info. Okay, Mr. T, I'm going to make a note of this question, and I will have to look on a cell phone after this stream. If I am able to find what you are referring to, I will screenshot it and create a thread and respond to you there. But let me get back to you after the stream. Not really able to pull up mobile at the moment and kind of display it for everybody. So I'll get back to you on that one. Made a note for myself here to check that out, but I'll respond in Discord. And going to move on to the next question here that came in from Larson. And Larson said, question about FanDuel Cash. My number 1 build with 100 Saber score has a player that only appears in 4% of the optimal lineups. There is a similar projected value player with 30% of the sims, but it brings my Saber score down slightly. Should I swap them? Okay, Larson. So great question. I really think this is like important, and this is something that we plan on changing. I know we haven't been able to change it yet. So if you're playing cash, like across the board, any sport, any site, whatever it may be, when you run a cash build, I would say always change your lineup sorting from Saber score to projected score. So, the answer to your question, like specifically, is yes, you should probably change it if the projected score is like higher for the second lineup. So Saber score is not as important in cash. In cash, you want to just pack in as many projected points as you possibly can. So, it's like it sorts the lineups by Saber score by default. It is something that we plan on changing and something that was brought up to us just recently by a user. So thank you for pointing it out. I'm going to remind the team, and just put this on the log to get changed. But if you're playing cash, always come in here and change it from Saber score to projected score. It's ultimately better for cash. So that's the answer there. Let me know if you have any follow-up. Going to move on to this next question that came in from Boss Hog 70. Question is there a way to set my overall ownership outcome before my build, not for individual player exposures, but overall lineup construction? So yes, Boss Hog, there is indeed a way to do that. and that is with our aggregate rules. So if you come over here to lineup rules and you click add a new rule, we have stack, group, aggregate. What you want to do is click on aggregate, and then you would want to change this to, my own, sum, or, if you want to use like geomean, another great option. You want to say like no more than, I don't know, 250, whatever you want to set this to. You can come in here, you could save the rule, and then now it would be applied to every lineup you run for every build, as long as this check for the rule is indeed like activated. So that's how you do that. Let me know if you have any follow-up there. And I'm going to hit this next question from John, aka JSync6. So John said, hi, I just noticed I was not on the list for week 5 mini 150 DK entries. I have entered all weeks so far. Okay, John, thank you for the heads up. I will make a note of your comment here, and I will take it back to the team, and we will make sure that to go back and check the CSV to make sure that you were indeed on there. So I will get back to you, create a thread, and let you know once we have checked that out, but we'll be sure to get back to you for the giveaway. So no problems there. And then second question here from Boss Hog 70 said, I need some help. I reserved a total of 50 entries in DK in about 6 different contests. I built 50 lineups in Saber. When I filled my contest, I just noticed that it repeated lineups in different contests. I wanted all 50 of my lineups spread out. How do I fix this? Okay, good question. So in order to do that, what you would do is that we're going to hop back to DK where we already built some lineups, kind of did an entry editor demo. So let's say, let's see how many lineups I had. 258. So I have 258 lineups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to change my number of lineups to the number of entries I had. So, for you, it was 50. So you just make sure that this is on 50. And then what you would do is you would go to fill entries. You would make sure all of the contests are checked, and you would use 2 options. You could either use unique rank or unique random. I personally like to use unique random. And then what I would do is hit fill entries. That would make sure that every single lineup, because I have 258 in my number of lineups and 258 entries, every entry got at least 1 lineup, and the entries get sorted randomly. So this top contest could be my 258th lineup. There's no particular order. If you want to be more specific, like we talked about earlier, and you want, your number 1 lineup on your number of lineups to go into your top contest, you could fill unique rank, and then it will fill it all the way down. So as long as the number of lineups is the same as your number of entries, then you will make sure to get a unique lineup in every single contest entry that you have for the night. So that's the way that works. And it looks like, Pippin Ain't Easy jumped in and helped out a little bit. Appreciate you, Pippin, helping them out where you could. But, just wanted to give a demo for everybody so they could see how to indeed do that in the future. Okay. Moving on to a question here from Casey is here now in Discord. Casey said, the max players on a team works sometimes, but not all the time. The optimizer is putting 4 Bengals and 4 Cowboys on all my lineups, and I have the rule set to no more than 3 players per team. Okay, so Casey, not exactly sure about your specific situation. I would say if you run into issues like this, the best place to put them is in the support channel. Or another great thing to do is that, if you're building and you're in your session and you see that, you have a rule, you're building, it's not working, the best thing you can do for us is to come up here and use this report a problem link, type a quick description, exactly what you sent in Discord, and this will give the team a lot of information about your session and help us troubleshoot what is going wrong further. So definitely the best way to go about that. What I can say is that since we've done the build speed updates, we've been having a little more issues with meeting some of the exposures that people set. It's something that the team is aware of, and it's something that we are working on resolving. So, I would say just be a little flexible, treat your min and max exposures a little more like guidelines, and be a little more accepting of like plus or minus 5 to 10% differences in your min and max exposures, just because the builder is going to make sure that you get positive EV lineups. And sometimes like the most positive EV lineups are ones that stray a little away from your exposures. If you're like really set on specific things, or you're just getting something completely opposite of what you want, the best thing I would suggest doing is, one, increasing your pool size. So if you're building on a 500 lineup pool, increase this to 1500. If that is still not working, I would then suggest to start making projection updates for particular players of plus or minus 10%, and seeing if that helps. And then, adjusting the exposure, adjusting the projection further if needed. But, first things first, try and get the exposures you want in the post build screen. If that's not working, increase your pool size. If that's not working, then start to adjust projections and start with small adjustments, which is why I recommended the 10%. That should be like the first step in trying to get what you want if the builder is not giving you what you want at the moment, until we resolve some of these exposure issues. So just a quick note for everybody there, and going to hit this next question from Danny Pickham. And Danny said, in NBA, is it still 0-0-10 for test builds? I assume if you run a straight build at regular settings, it's just simulating the contest, or 0-0-10, just making a diverse lineup optimals. Okay, so Danny, really good question here. I would say, the point of, running like a 0-0-10 build in any sport really is like to not let the sim outputs be affected by correlation or ownership fade. You're really just trying to, see what the sim thinks in single sim optimal builds, which is like what you're really like trying to accomplish with a 0-0-10 build. I don't think it's wrong to run, a 0-0-10 or a test build. I think it depends like what goal you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you want to come in here and say, okay, I want to know what just like the sim optimals are, no correlation or ownership fade adjustments, and just give me just like the results from the sim outputs. 0-0-10 would be a great thing to do to accomplish that task. If you want to say, hey, I just want to like see what SaberSim thinks about the slate overall, and take into account correlation and ownership fade, and kind of tell me, what approach, what angle that SaberSim thinks is best to approach the slate before I start drawing any conclusions or opinions about tweaks that I want to make. I would come in here, I would just run a regular test build and kind of try and interpret what the builder is giving me about where the best spots to attack are. So I think that it depends on what your goal is. I think there's a lot of different ways to come at a slate. I don't think you always need to come at the slate from the same way that somebody else does. There's a lot of paths to winning. And so, if you're really looking for like those single slate optimals for a particular slate, 0-0-10 is your best bet. So those are kind of the differences between running like quote unquote like research build at 0-0-10, or just like a standard test build. Tell SaberSim, run a build and just kind of interpret what the outputs are there. So that's like the difference between the two. Let me know if you have any follow-up there. We're going to hit this next question from TBK. And TBK said, going to get this in the chat. Good evening. I have a quick question. By chance, can you go over the process in step 3 after you build your lineups about going through your pool of 500 to get the best 20 lineups? I'm a little hesitant on picking lineups outside of the top 20 based on Saber score. Okay, good question here. We're going to use the build that we ran for NBA. As you can see, we have 20 lineups. We have a pool of 500. What I will say is that, don't overthink going deeper into your pool. It's totally okay. The vast majority of these lineups are really good. And the reason I say that is because what happens, you go into the build screen, you pick your settings based on the contest that you're playing or building for, you run your lineups. All the lineups get built. Then what happens is SaberSim uses our own metric, Saber Score, to judge the lineups after the fact. So the lineups get built and then they get ranked by Saber Score. If you need a definition of what Saber Score is, if you hover over Saber Score, it'll kind of tell you, but it's basically our way of quantifying the impact of upside, correlation, and ownership on the strength of a lineup. So, the most basic version there. And what will happen is that, what you can expect is that, okay, lineups at the top, Saber Score graded better, and then lineups at the bottom, Saber Score graded as worse. So that's why Jordan likes to, use the metric of like, hey, try and stay as like a guardrail in like the top 25% of your pool. One, this depends on how many lineups you're building and how many lineups you're building for. So, if you're building a pool of 500, but you're building for 150 max, you're already past 25%. So I think it's okay to go deeper into your pool. So that's not like a hard stopping point there. I would say, it's totally okay to go deeper into your pool. I would try and get as many min uniques as you feel comfortable with. So like the way I like to do it is I like to increase my min uniques, which is just decreasing the inter lineup, or I'd say intra lineup diversity within your portfolio. And I like to kind of spot check lineups at the bottom. It's like, is this a lineup I'm comfortable playing? Or is this just like, no, I don't really want to play this lineup. Let's go, back higher into my pool and take lineups from a higher point. So, we're just going to kind of like do this a little bit and see how far we get. So, right here at 4 min uniques, we can see that we don't even have enough lineups to meet this criteria. So we're going to go back to 3, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom where 3 is. And to me, this lineup, I'm not highly opinionated about it. I think it's like a totally okay lineup. So I would be more than comfortable playing rank 331 out of 500 in my pool. So I think that's the best way to kind of treat lineups outside of your top 20. It's like, look at like the lowest Saber Score lineup and ask yourself if you're okay playing that. The answer is no. Come in here and like maybe we'll do min uniques too, and we're at lineup 195, and I'm a lot more comfortable playing this set of lineups. Know that the exposures are going to be more concentrated. As we can see, we're getting 75% of Olenek, 68% of Green, and then when we increased this, we got a little less of both of those guys. So, that's definitely one way to go about it. Let me know if you have any follow-up there. Happy to talk more about it. So, and then TBK had a second question here. TBK said, I have another question. I did a review of my lineups from yesterday and from previous weeks for NFL DFS. In the future, should I build my lineups based off of the 95th percentile? By chance, can you go over when and how I should use the 95th percentile to build my lineups? Okay, good question here, TBK. And what TBK is referring to is like when you run a build, you can come over here and you can change the player projections to essentially a custom projection, which is just their percentile in the sim. So, if you, for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to add in the player percentiles here so we can see what this is referring to. So what I did was I came in here, I set all of the players' projection to their 95th percentile projection, which we can see matches to what we see in the home screen. So like Olenek is set to 45.76 and his 95th percentile average projection was 45.8, which is just rounded to 1 decimal, not 2. And what this will do is it will treat every player as if their new projection is this 95th percentile and resort the lineups with this as their new projection. So we can see that like the lineups will indeed change when we do this, as opposed to if we just use the average. So I believe that one had like Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Green, Olenek, Markanian. So 2 Jazz, 2 Heat, and then a couple one-offs there. And then if we change this, we're going to see what lineup comes up. Oh, okay. So it did not indeed change it, but it just change their new projected score. So what should happen? And maybe like this lineup is just that good. It has the potential to like resort the lineups, your top 150 lineups in your pool in a nutshell. I would advise against using this tool. So what we decided that was that like it doesn't take every single player to have their 95th percentile outcome for a lineup to have a 95th percentile outcome. And I think you could see this like by checking the lineups that are like winning the contest. Like not every person in the lineup has like the fire emoji, right? Like sometimes guys have like one snowflake in their lineup. Sometimes you have two players that have, no symbol and they just were able to get there with the average amount of points that they got and didn't have any special, ceiling game, had like closer to a 50th percentile outcome. So, when you sort this way, what you're saying is like every single player had their 95th percentile outcome. And we didn't think that was a good way to do that. So what we decided to do were to create new lineup sorting metrics, which is like what we've teased and what we've been working on and are trying really hard behind the scenes to finish, which is the lineup percentiles metric. So that is coming down the road in the very near future. Still putting the finishing touches on that, but basically it's a much better way of using the percentiles. I would advise against using this. But if you're like really, because all it is you're just changing the projections. But I would stick with Saber Score for the time being, and then when the new lineup sorting methods come out, I would definitely mess around with them and try them out. It's going to be a much better way of what this is ultimately trying to do. So, stay tuned and we'll have more information on it. It is coming, and I promise you guys that. So, all right, that does it for all of our questions in the Discord today. And we're going to be hopping over to YouTube chat. I saw plenty of questions coming in, so still got a long way to go in the stream, everybody. Jeff Manning said, if I have a core of 4 players in NBA, but I only want to see them in, say, 50% of my lineups, how would I do that? Okay, so good question here. What I would suggest doing is taking your core of players, and maybe for demonstration, it's Embiid and Harden, and then we got to pick a couple cheaper guys here. So what I would do is I would set a min exposure to those players. What I would interesting concept here. So usually, like when you have a core, what I would do is I would set like a group rule, and then I would put the players in here that you want. So do a manual group rule, and you would say Embiid, maybe Harden. Let's get like some value guys in there. Olenek, and we're going to use Usman for the sake of the example. And I would say, use at least 4 from this core. And that would make sure like every player got into your lineup. What you could do is you could add more players to your core. That way, like maybe you have, 8 guys that you want to see, and it'll make it more likely that each player is used closer to 50% of the time than not, then, closer to 50% than 100. It'll be like a little more toward that spectrum. If you have like a bigger group of players that like you're really comfortable with having in your lineups. The other way that I was suggesting is that, if you come in here and set a min exposure of 50 to a group of players, it's not certain that, those players will be used together all the time. It's more likely they'll be used all the time together. So, these like 2 methods are basically how you do it. There's no way to set a group rule that says like, hey, only apply this rule to 50% of the lineups I build, and then disable for the next 50% of lineups that I build. So unfortunately, there's no way to do that. So you can either have like 100% if you add only 4 players. If you have more players that you're comfortable with, I would add those players to the group rule to give the group rule some more flexibility. That way, some players do indeed get left out, or you could set a min exposure to those players, and you're going to have plenty of lineups with all 4 of them used. So not an exact way, a couple ways to get close to what you're looking for, but that's how I would go about it for the time being. And what I'll do here is I will put in a feature request for the ability in our V2 of the lineup rules to be able to say like, hey, apply rule X to X% of lineups. So, I'm going to put that in, and I think it would be a really neat feature. So just making a note for myself here to add that to the log to be reviewed for features in the future. Okay. Question here from Skull. Hey, Andrew, can you go over research builds for NBA DraftKings? What information do I even look at when I am doing the 0010 research build? So Skull, kind of touched on a really similar question that came in just a little bit ago. I believe that one came in from, let's see, from Danny Pickham. If you just rewind a little bit, kind of talked about research builds and the difference between research builds and test builds. Really what you're just looking for is you're telling the builder, give me ownership and correlation agnostic lineups, trying to get as close to the sim optimals as possible. And what you're really looking for is like leverage. I think this is a topic that Jordan kind of talked about on Friday when he was having some internet issues. Is let's say like we did this right, and the topic was like false value or like faulty value, or I think it was fragile. Fragile value was the term that Uncrabby Cabby used, and I think it's like a pretty cool like concept overall. So you take like these high value guys, right? So we're just going to sort by value for the sake of this. And what you want to say is like, is this value play still a strong play if I decrease their projection by, 10% to start? And I'm going to use it with Usman. And it's mostly because their raw point projection is still low, even though they match up well on a point per dollar basis. So if I were to decrease this by like 2 points, I'm going to say, 18.8. Like, wow, where did he go? So, okay, that dropped his value, but it didn't look like it adjusted his exposure very much. So that's like a perfect way. So it's like, okay, for Garuba, we're going to do it one more time. He's at 85%. If I adjust his projection down by 2 points, which is 10%, we only lost 2 lineups with him. So like his value is not that fragile. But, sometimes you'll come in here and you'll do this exercise and somebody will just like significantly drop like way, way down. And that is what I would consider fragile value. So I think that, you can use a 0010 build to try and determine if people are indeed fragile value or not. Another thing I think that you can do is just come in here and look at like your entire pool and see that, are these players, essentially, if you look at the whole pool, that is you're basically trying to determine like if they are valuable across the slate, and 500 lineup pool is a small sample size for that. But you're saying that like, hey, Olenek is coming in at 38% owned, and he is optimal in 62% of our slate simulations from this pool of 500 that we pulled from the Sims. And so, like his value is really good matched up. Like he basically pays off his ownership. So you're really looking at like leverage in the positive and negative directions. Are there any players that are like highly owned, like Devin Vassell, that just don't get there as often? And so like, I'd say like leverage and fragile value are really 2 things that research build can kind of help you determine. So those are things to think about. Let me know if you have any follow-up there. I'm going to hit this next question from GM Knight. Says, how many games does the projection system adjust for rookies/injured players in NBA? It seems that the projections are not aggressive enough. So, GM Knight, I can say that, for rookies are particularly hard to project, across the industry. I think as more games get played, those player like trends and stats become more reliable and more consistent, and we can project them better, but so can other people. So I think that that's just like a common thing with rookies. It takes like some time to get the statistics. uh just they got to play games. They got to play games, and we have to see how they do, and we have to see it over a certain sample size. And it's pretty common for rookies to be projected better the further into the season we go. So to comment on your question, if you don't think we're being aggressive enough with some of these adjustments, I think it's totally okay. That's like a great spot to add value. It's like, hey, these players are pretty hard to project early in the season. I understand that, and I want to take the stance that I want to be more aggressive with their point projections, especially early in the season. I think it's a great value add. I think it's something you can totally do in the app, and I don't think you're losing a lot by doing that if that's the way you want to go. So, really, like, stepping back, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. It's like, at the end of the night, do I want to say, like, oh my gosh, I knew I should have done this thing, and why didn't I do it? I'm such an idiot. Or do you want to be like, okay, I took a shot on a spot where I thought I had like an angle and it didn't work out. It happens. I'll either, try it again, or I'll dial it back and try it from a different angle, or not use that approach anymore. So, at the end of the day, do you want to be kicking yourself for saying, I knew I should have done something? Or do you want to try and say, didn't work out? Okay, there's always tomorrow. That's why we preach bankroll management. That's why we have the DFS profit plan. So you could take some of those shots and not go busto and get right back on the horse again tomorrow. So just something that I've been thinking about personally a lot is that, don't be afraid to take a shot where you think you have a spot or an angle to take. I think it's totally okay. All right. Going down in YouTube chat, see a question from Cavi. Says, hey, Andrew, one of the other services has a boom bust tool. How would you use SaberSim to create a boom bust tool? Okay, so, I'm familiar with the tool you're thinking about. What I would do is, we have these awesome percentiles down here. I think that these percentiles are, very, very good, and they are taken from our simulations. And, we have this range of outcomes. All the percentiles are doing are finding the point where this person has their 95th percentile outcome and showing it to you here. I think that this is a great way and a better way to try and kind of determine what someone's ceiling can be at different ranges. This is like really detailed, and you can compare it by position. You can compare it by salary for like a salary range, so like maybe you want to look at like salary, and like you see somebody like Jason Tatum, excuse me, a little sick. You want to see someone like Jason Tatum, and like his, percentile at the 95th is the same as Jokic's, and he's like $1,000 less at a different position. So maybe you say, okay, I want to pay up at the small forward / power forward position and not be so concerned about paying up at the center position. So like, that's one way to think about it. I think that, taking advantage of our range of outcomes, taking advantage of sim diversity, and looking at the percentiles is a very good way to try and kind of understand what players' projections or potential outcomes at their highest ranges are. And I want to, re-stress the fact that, especially when we're building basketball lineups, I'm going to change this, that, we are using upside correlation. So the correlation that we are taking is not from players' average range of outcomes or from their 25th percentile outcomes. We are weighting heavier the correlations when these players do indeed get those higher point outcomes in the simulations. So, upside correlation, sim diversity, ranges of outcomes. I think all of these things are, our version of the boom bust tool, and a very sophisticated version for that matter. So that's the way I would think about it. And let me know if you have any follow up there. Okay. Let's see. Looks like there was just some back and forth on this particular topic. How often a player will appear in optimal versus his ownership. And, that kind of like goes back to like our research bill, our 0010, just taking a single slate optimals correlation and ownership agnostic. Okay. Skull asks how to lock in players when late swapping. Okay. So, the answer to the question is that you would come in here and you would either hit lock or you would increase their min exposure to 100%. I know that there have been some issues using these tools that the team is aware of. So, if you're not getting to as much of a player in late swap as you want, what I would do is I would just come in here and increase their projection and run a late swap, see if you're getting as much as you want. If you're not, come in here, increase their projection further. So for the moment, you're going to have to use the projections for maintaining late swap exposure. It's not like the best way to do it, but for the time being, it is indeed a workaround. So that's how I would do that. Okay, next question from Patrick. Patrick said, do you like to put an ownership filter for a large NBA slate, like a 1% own? I noticed the default have a 10-point projection filter. Okay. So Patrick, if you want to do that, I think it's like totally okay. I think that ownership in NBA is typically like warranted. If somebody is getting a lot of ownership, it's usually for a good reason. And inversely, if somebody's not getting any ownership, it's probably because they're a really bad place. So if you want to curate your player pool further using a rule like a player must be 1% owned, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. If you want to adjust the point projection that you see in here up or down, depending on what you want to do, I think that's also okay. This is set to 13. I know Max, when Max was on with Jordan, said that he likes to increase this to 18 to do player pool curation. So, a lot of different ways to go about it. I would suggest trial and error. See if, putting the filter you want, you still get lineups that you're comfortable with at the bottom ranges of your pool. And, if you set it and you don't like it, mess around with it, try different things. You can throw a question in the Discord in NBA. A lot of different people do a lot of different things. You'll get some great ideas in there, and people are always willing to discuss, different aspects of their process. So, I've started to like adjust this based on the slate size is usually something that I like to do, increase or decrease based on the number of games. But it's still something that I'm working through. I would never say don't follow Max Steinberg and his advice. Max is a great player and continues to crush week in, week out. So, increasing it to do player pool curation is totally okay as well. Okay, guys, running on to the last couple questions here. If there's anything that you want to get into the chat to discuss today, get it in now, or else we will finish up these last couple questions and be right back here tomorrow. So, question here from Terp Burglar said, what if you have put a rule to play those players together like a stack and then put them all to 50% exposure? Okay, so this is referring to the question that we answered about setting a rule for, a certain number of like core players. The only issue is like you could do a rule saying like, hey, use these 4 players together, but then it'll be in every lineup. So then you won't have any more lineups in the pool that doesn't have those players. So that's like the challenge there. If you're okay getting your hands dirty in CSVs, what you could do is you could build a lineup pool with your group of 4, and maybe you're building 150 lineups, and you build 75 there, and then you do a second build with that rule checked off, build another 75 lineups, and then go into your CSV and combine the two. If you're comfortable doing that, that's one way to do it for the time being. But other than that, the workarounds we went over are probably the best way of getting there. But, Turb, I appreciate you, trying to think through the problem, but that's kind of the limitation there. Skull said, "Thank you for the answer. Happy to answer any and all questions." Joseph said, "Can I set a rule so that my QBs won't have their opposing defense in the same lineup, or do I have to do every QB individually?" Okay, Joseph. So if we are going to NFL, and we're going to toggle over here. So I guess it depends what you're building for. If you are building for the main slate, which if you're here, you can clarify for me. So if you come in the main slate, what you can do is, it says allow players versus opposing defense. So this is always turned off. So, if you have this accounts for your quarterback question. If you do not want to play a quarterback against the defense, this is turned off by default. So that will never appear in your lineups unless you manually toggle that on. So that's like the trick for main slates. If you're talking about a showdown slate, like the one tonight, which you might be, what you can do is you can come in here, you create a group rule. You could say auto. Interesting. Maybe you can't say auto. I think what you would have to do is you would have to create two group rules and say, if you do an if then, so if at least one, and then let's say, we'll use Mac Jones as an example. So Mac Jones in the captain and the flex, then use no more than 0 secondary players, and then you would just put your defenses in here. And then you would just put the Chicago D. And since this is a showdown, you only have to do this twice, so it's not as big of a headache. But that's just because DraftKings treats all positions as flex in this game type. So that's why you can't, do it by position. You have to do it by flex or captain. So you're saying, if I use Mac Jones in either the captain or the flex, then do not use the Bears in either the captain or the flex. And then you can do that twice. But the other rule, which is like the more tedious one for the main slates, is how you do that. And I saw that, you said for the main and showdown as well. So we got to both of those, happy to answer the question anytime. All right. Next question from John. John said, if you end up making a lot of exposure changes, even if the pool is able to fill the requirements, does it make sense to still send the exposures back home and build again using the new exposures for 150 max or maybe 20 max? Okay, John, really good question. I would say at the moment with the issues with the min exposures here, I would say, handling it in step 3 is the best case scenario. I think if the build you're using is getting you the exposures that you want without the I can't meet your exposures message, use that build and use the exposures that you're getting in that build. I don't think there's a reason to send it home unless you're unable to get what you want. So, if you are able to get what you want, use the build you have. If you're not able to get it, then send it home. It would be my best advice, especially at the moment. Okay, hopping back over to Discord. I see this question here from Texas Illini, and this is our last question at the moment. So get any more questions in the queue if you want to keep the stream going today. Question says, as a follow-up to the 95th percent question, if I use that, should I redo that after sims are updated? If not, I assume if I don't do this, those custom projections will be used until I either reset them altogether. Same question when I go to late swap. Do I need to reset the projections? Okay, so, it sounds like you're using this, Texas Illini. So the answer is yes, this is a custom projection once you sort by that. So, but okay, we're gonna try this out. So let's go back to NBA because I don't think it'll go home technically. So, what I mean is just because you change the exposures in this tab, the exposures will not get sent home unless you send them home. So if I come in here and I change it to 95th, unless I hit send projections to the home screen, these will only be the projections in this screen. So that means if we go home and new sims run, the projections will be updated like normally, because your custom projection is not here. It's only in that one build. So as long as you don't send the projections home, if any new sims run, the projections will indeed be updated accordingly, and you don't have to worry about resetting the custom projection in the build, because as long as you don't send it home. So that's the best way to think about it. And there's like no way to set the projection to the 95th percentile in the home screen, so you don't have to worry about it for late swap. Okay. Question from John. Is there a plan to do live running exposures? Like 50% would mean 1 in every 2 players instead of just 5/10 overall. Okay, John, not sure what you mean by live running exposures. If you like have a file and then you update it. So like, let's say, we have this basketball file, right? And then these are the exposures that we have. So then if I were to fill my entries, I don't have any entries for this. So like, let's say, I filled my entries and then these are my exposures. If I run a late swap, okay, this is just like a note for late swap. So when you run a late swap and you hit this button here, and then the slate is not started, are you sure you want a late swap? Yes. So then, I would run my settings. I would run my lineups. Since I don't have a file, I can't do this right now. But if I were to run my lineups, when you are in the build, it'll give you the option for late swap to just download your lineup file in the top right corner. When you hit download, SaberSim is taking that as, okay, you are now using these lineups, and it will update your entries file. So if you were to go back to entries, it'll show your new exposures based on your late swap because you downloaded it. So as soon as you hit download in a late swap build, you are telling SaberSim that these are your new lineups, and it will adjust your exposures in the entry editor. So, a little follow-up here said, so like if my player is put in the first lineup in the builder, wouldn't be able to put him in the next lineup with running exposures at 50% max. Okay. So, I think this is referring to like the min and max exposure issue. So, you are correct that is how we have described how it works in the past. I think it works a little differently now, which is why we are having some issues with it. But at the end of the day, the devs understand like how it works and what the limitations are. So they are working to kind of work it back into the builder logic. So I wouldn't think too much about it. It's very high on our radar to fix, and we should be doing something in the very near future to allow you to get back to using those features the way you used to. But in the meantime, the my projection adjustments as like a last resort after increasing pool size, after doing it in step 3, is your best bet. But no, I understand exactly what you're talking about, John. And to avoid the clumping, the min uniques is like by far the best option. But that being said, everybody, that was our last question. Long stream today. Happy to hit all the questions that came in while I was gone and over the weekend. Happy to be back in the saddle. Good luck today in all of your contests. Looks like we got the first NBA game kicking off in the next 45 minutes here. Got the NFL Showdown kicking off in about 2 hours. Good luck. If you're ever having any problems, the team is always around in Discord. Pop a message into the support. Someone will get back to you right away. And good luck in all of your entries. I will see you all back here tomorrow, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern. Until then, see ya.